Fair use act, nigga.
We got to stand with our Constitution. Understand it's our only solution. No more treason. No more lies. Stop all the bullshit. Let us live our lives. So where the hell do they lift off to? They're all just movies to deceive you, showing you all that can't be true. A magic show just to control you. Once upon a painted outer space, imaginary non-existent planets placed through endless science fiction void they preach we race. With movies, books and media thrust in our face, divine supreme creator hidden and replaced. Evolution demon, they need you to believe all they pontificate, to swallow all the climate scale they orchestrate, all founded on the nonsense that they fabricate, to save us from catastrophe they postulate. Surveillance police think before it gets too late. Globalist demon, enslavement of humanity, the global goal. Greenhouse gases spoiling non-existent globe. CO2 trying to push out complete control. The imaginary planet otherwise explodes. The saving of this realm is on this lie exposed. Psychopath demon, there ain't no purpose, there ain't no ball, no bending bodies, no seas at all, no spinning ground, no upside down, no barriers, vacuum spiraling around, no planets are fake, no gravity waves, no satellites, ISS or outer space. It's a cartoon world, physically impossible to enslave. Wanna know? 'Cause the seas are level, no horizons flat. Every plane flies level off the barrack flies back. Air bubbles rise up, rain falls straight down. You cannot have motion when emotion bound.
Yeah. They told me that the earth curves, but line never lies. No matter how high I climb, that horizon's still my guide. From sea to mountaintop, it's always eye level flat. X-axis, Y-axis, no curve, just effect.
Like a mirror on the water, that reflection stays true. If the ocean had a curve, you'd see a funhouse view. Sunbeams running pathways straight to where you stand. Flat reflections tell the story, not a ball of shifted
From the
land.
Pyrenees to the Alps, a record line of sight. Mallorca from Barcelona, the distance of plain light. Chicago skyline stands tall where the curve should hide the land. 8 inches per mile square, but here we see too far to
The
understand.
skies with the pilot's gyroscopes locked in place. If we lived on a spinning globe, they're just to keep their trace. But those flight paths stay steady, routes make sense on a flat plane. From point A to B direct, no curve to entertain.
Bridges span the rivers, tunnels cut through the stone. All built on flat earth principles, the curve is never known. Spirit levels, plumb bobs, tools of ancient engineers. No one ever accounts for curvature, it's been flat for all these years.
Sometimes it's lonely, searching truth in a crowd. Questions spinning in my mind, I'm not backing down. Looking past the stories, seeing with my own eyes. Awakening to wonder, letting go of fables die. It's common sense, just look and see. The truth is clear and white. No one's upside down in Australia. No trees growing from the sky. Just trust your eyes and logic. Let the simple facts unfold. The earth is flat and level. That's the story we've been told.
They show us moon landings filmed on a studio floor. I assess with glitches, wires in the door, green screens in the background, bubbles in the space. NASA's Hollywood show just to lie to our face.
They use fisheye lenses to bend that horizon round, but Hubble never turned to show us Earth from its bound. No camera on the moon, the stream is 24/7, like just cartoons and composites. The globe is just contrived.
Periscope and plumb bob, they all align straight and true. Spirit levels tell the story, gyroscopes join the crew. P1000 lens zooms and shows the world with no bend, and geodetic tools measure tunnels that run straight at the end.
Compass and sundial, they relied on a level ground. Astrolabe and sextant measure angles all around. Laser lines stay straight, radar and sonar know the score. The art of light and compass point out there's no curve explored.
Water always finds its level, that's the nature of its flow. From a cup to a mighty ocean, it stays flat wherever you go. Rivers run from the mountains seeking that even line, proving Earth's no spinning ball, just a flat plane by design.
With every question answered, a new road appears, breaking through the doubt, letting go of old fears. Eyes wide open now on a journey so true, seeking out the freedom that comes with what's new. It's just your common sense, the world is plain to see. No rain falling upward, no oceans curving free. Let the simple truths remind you, let the evidence be told. The earth is flat and steady, and the story's getting old.
From the day she plow like a mule. Oh, look like a spool. And she danced on the graves of all those fools pulled before you. Listen now, once you awaken, you can't unknow what you know now. It explains what you felt for your whole life. Everything wrong with the world, now you know what it is. Splinters removed from your mind, now at last you feel safe. Do you know what I'm talking about? Matrixes everywhere, it's all around us. You see it, you feel it, the world has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from truth. You're slaves brought into bondage and prison, but outlaws exist in your mind.
As a truther, aka conspiracy theorist, when I see things like this, I know something's afoot. Of course, they're going to mix in modern planes and stuff so that if you do catch on to the deception, well, what are you talking about? Well, there's planes that don't even match his plane in the photos, even though you search for that. I mean, if I was in Chico, California, I'd go down there to the museum and probably have to step over the rope and peer through the window just to get a picture of this man's cockpit. They don't want you to see it. Specifically hiding that. Now, I went down the rabbit hole. I've got this fella's book because I want to juxtapose the reality of what this man did. They call wrong way Corrigan, because he was supposed to fly from New York back to San Diego on the Great Circle route, which in reality his plane would only go to 10,000 feet. That was the ceiling. It couldn't climb any higher than that. Well, he can't get over the mountain range in the Rocky Mountains here in Colorado because those have 14,000 feet peaks. So there's no way he could go that route. So he had to go by way of El Paso. He made that trip a couple of times, and they refused to give him permission to fly across the ocean to Ireland. He helped build the plane for Lucky Lindy back in 1927. This ancient 9-year-old plane that he spent $900 after purchasing it for $325, replacing the motor, doing all kinds of things, building gas tanks. He had no instrumentation other than 2 compasses, one up above and one between his legs. That was it. That was all he had for navigation. He didn't even have a map. I've read his book, and on page 188 he talks about having the Great Circle map, which I'm sure he had to say, you know, these people sell their souls for $1, when in reality he would travel down to Florida, across Texas, and up through El Paso to get back because his plane couldn't go that height. So this is his Great Circle map, which was the only map he had in his plane. And via dead reckoning with a compass, he was able to fly to Ireland. This is a Curtis Robin plane, the sort of plane he had. That's the cockpit. You can see how sparse it is. This is a 1929 airplane. This is his. This is the compass right here that he used. He had another one up here, which he claimed in his book lost all the fluid and was useless. And he couldn't hardly see this one. That's why he went the wrong way. Well, that's garbage. But you can see the panel here. And this plane they're trying to claim, this cockpit is his, is not his. This is Lucky Lindbergh's cockpit. They won't show you the inside of his. Very sparse. That's the only picture you're going to get. where you can make out any of the instruments. Very sparse. He's blocking them here. See how few there are? But now, they've got it listed as if that's his cockpit. But in reality, this is Lucky Lindbergh. And Lindbergh, when he donated his plane to the Smithsonian, one condition, they had to leave the door open so they could see inside. Lucky Lindbergh as well played the Great Circle map hoax as a way he navigated to France. This was a paid-for race. This is all about fooling the sheeple into the ball earth belief. Wake up from the lies, folks.
This is a huge relief to Ethan, but also a big surprise. He hasn't expected that a flight from Hong Kong to Los Angeles will go anywhere near Alaska. The reason it did is mainly because of the way flight paths are plotted to account for the curvature of the globe.
If you look at a flat map, and you draw a line between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, you go straight across the water, it's like, that makes sense. If you look at a flat map, and you draw a line between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, you go straight across the water, it's like, that makes sense. But you look at a globe, and you draw a straight line from Hong Kong to LA, and then you take it off the globe and then flatten it out, it's an arch. So it's called the Great Circle route. If you looked at that on the Great Circle, it's not that far from Alaska in the first place. But you look at a globe and you draw a straight line from Hong Kong to LA, and then you take it off the globe and then flatten it out, it's an arch. So it's called the Great Circle route. If you looked at that on the Great Circle, it's not that far from Alaska in the first place.
A very logical decision-making. Lindbergh was many things, but he was not crazy.
He was capable of defining a route which others hadn't yet seen. He was a real visionary.
He had only a compass for navigation, and there would be no landmarks for most of the way. How far was it to Paris? Hall asked one day as they worked on designing the gas tanks. Lindbergh wasn't sure.
And he went to the Great Globe sitting in the public library in San Diego and actually laid some string across to measure the distance from New York to Paris.
3,600 miles. At 10 gallons an hour, 360 gallons, plus a reserve in case of an emergency. Lindbergh knew that his life depended on having enough gas.
Now, when Charles starts planning his trip to France, he needs a way to navigate over the ocean. When he flies over land, he always uses road maps to help him figure out where he's going. He used landmarks such as rivers and train tracks. It's really hard to do this over an ocean because, of course, there's no such landmarks in the giant sea of water. So he uses another method called dead reckoning in order to navigate. And dead reckoning, you need three things: a map, a compass, and a watch. Charles's map was very special. While planning this route, he chose the shortest distance between New York and Paris. If you look at a globe, the shortest distance between those two cities is a straight line, right? But since it's difficult to carry a globe around with you, we use maps. However, if you look at how the line looks on the globe compared to a flat map, you can see that it has to be translated a little bit for that different surface. And Charles uses that straight line, which looks like a curve on a flat map, and he uses a special map called a Mercator's map. And he wrote in his book, The Spirit of St. Louis, and I quote, "With the instruments that Hall loaned me, I drew a straight line between New York and Paris on the genomic projection. And then I transferred the points from that line at 100-mile intervals onto the Mercator's projection and connected these points with straight lines. At each point, I marked down the distance from New York and the magnetic course to the next change in angle. I chose 100-mile intervals as a convenient distance to work with because with wind and cruising speed considered, it seems likely that the Spirit of St. Louis will cover about that distance each hour. I decide to lay a second route across the ocean by trigonometry. But it's not as easy to find the Great Circle latitudes and longitudes through logarithmic formulas as it is to pick them off a chart. Even after I learn the procedure, it takes a long time to work out each position, and there are 36 of them in all. After spending several days at this task, I reach a point in the Atlantic, 1,200 miles beyond the coast of Newfoundland. My mathematical route and my charted route coincide so closely that it seems like a waste of time to consider with the calculations. So the key things here are Charles knew that his plane would travel about 100 miles in 1 hour. And so he makes those lines, as you can see on this map here, at those intervals. And he uses his compass to calculate the reading on which angle he should be facing the Spirit of St. Louis and which travel direction he should use. And he uses that watch to time himself every hour to make those slight adjustments so he could stay en route and make sure he arrives in Paris.
The weight of a co-pilot meant an extra 50 gallons of gas. Lindbergh was ruthless about saving weight. He eliminated fuel gauges. Based on 10 gallons an hour, he would keep track of consumption using his wristwatch. Instead of a heavy metal seat, he had a light wicker chair. He estimated how much his drinking water would weigh, and he even trimmed the paper margins from his maps. And he would not take a parachute. 4 times a parachute had saved his life. This time Lindbergh would save 20 pounds.
He figured he wouldn't need it if he went down in the Atlantic. He would probably die in its icy waters anyway.
And so they did design this plane, which in the end has no forward vision, in fact. Right in front of the pilot, where a windshield might normally be, were in fact gas tanks. And this was going to be little more than a flying gas tank.
I don't think he probably had much interest in anybody else's way of getting across the ocean.
It took 6 weeks to design and build the plane. His financial backers had suggested the name. They were, after all, interested in the publicity.
Check out the lateral periscope I put in. Should be useful for takeoff and landing.
It's perfect.
Go ahead, have a look in the cockpit. We put in 4 controls so you can control the gas tanks yourself to keep the plane balanced.
So what's the final unladen weight?
I think we'll be around 1 ton, 150. Why?
Impossible. We said less than a ton. Otherwise, fully laden, I'll never get off the ground.
I know, but I've done everything possible.
The Spirit needs to be lighter. I don't need the radio. Same for the lighting battery. Out it goes. A torch will do the job. How are we doing?
1 ton?
All right, a bit less.
But Slim, you can't.
What's the point of a parachute over the ocean?
But you can't even swim.
So I'll learn. Okay, take the parachute out, and we're good.
But he didn't want to bring too much extraneous material because any ounce of something that wasn't useful could have been gasoline or was weight saved. He was absolutely obsessed with saving weight.
He had nothing in this aircraft, nothing. No parachute, no radio, no sextant, because it's too difficult to use when the plane is unstable. In those conditions, you can't even hold a sextant.
It's astonishing when you look at the control panel. It's rudimentary, to say the least. He just had gauges. It seems incredible. You wonder how he managed to fly at night with so few instruments.
That's why he worked alongside the team building his aircraft. He knew how everything worked. So the slightest noise, the slightest thing out of the ordinary, Lindbergh knew what it was.
The Orteig Prize continued to attract catastrophe. Despite Fonk's accident, everyone wanted to carry off the $25,000 by being the first man to cross the Atlantic. Byrd had recently crashed during final trials. Fortunately, he got away with a broken arm.
Douglas fell on a small company, Ryan Aircraft. One of the mechanics at this company was Douglas Corrigan. Douglas was directly involved in the construction of one of the most famous airplanes in the history of aviation, the Spirit of St. Louis, the plane that Charles Lindbergh in 1927 made the first solo transatlantic flight in history after 33 hours in the air. The staff of Ryan Aircraft that were involved in the construction of the Spirit of St. Louis signed the back of the spinner with good wishes to Charles. Among the signatures was also the name of Douglas Corrigan. Being involved in the construction of the legendary aircraft alongside Lindbergh had such a powerful impact on Douglas that he set himself a goal, inspired by Charles's success, to reduplicate Lindbergh's achievement by any means. However, since he was an Irish American, he chose Dublin rather than Paris as his destination. But having a strong inspiration was not enough. First of all, Douglas needed a reliable aircraft. Even though they were doing quite well, Douglas never forgot about his dream to cross the Atlantic, even for a moment. Later on, Corrigan decided to spend all of his savings on buying a plane and returned to California to prepare it for his transatlantic flight. $10,580. That is how much Charles Lindbergh paid to build the Spirit of St. Louis. Of course, Douglas Corrigan did not have that much money. The best that he could afford was an old Curtiss Robin that cost him $310. The flight to California took almost 2 weeks because on his way, Douglas made landings every 100-150 kilometers to pick up passengers when he could find them, so it would at least partially cover the cost of fuel. But there was a huge disappointment for Douglas when he finally arrived in California. Douglas had made some improvements to his plane, including the installation of more powerful engine and additional fuel tanks, which by the way were placed right in the cabin, completely blocking the forward view from the cockpit. And even though he made these upgrades, a federal inspector assessed the aircraft and considered the plane unsafe for flight across the ocean and issued permission for cross-country flights only. However, it did not stop Douglas. In 1936, he set out on a flight to New York and simultaneously sent a request to the Federal Bureau of Air Commerce asking for transatlantic flight permission. But for no apparent reason, he was told to wait until the next year. And he waited. And then Douglas was told that to make a transatlantic flight, a pilot must be able to work with a radio and have a radio operator's license. Frustrated, Douglas returned to California. Even though his plane did not have a radio, Corrigan received the radio operator license after a couple of months. He submitted his application to the Federal Bureau, but it was rejected again. To make matters worse, the government refused to renew the license for Corrigan's plane. This now meant that he was not allowed to fly not only across the ocean, but at all. It seemed that this would definitely put an end to his dream, but Douglas simply refused to give up. He figured, well, they can't hang you for flying a plane without a license, and headed to New York again. Corrigan never admitted this, but apparently his plan was to land in New York late at night when airport officials would have already left the airfield. Then he was going to refuel his plane unnoticed and set out to Europe. But unexpectedly for Douglas, due to bad weather conditions and technical breakdowns, his flight to New York lasted for as long as 9 days. As a result, he missed a safe weather window. The conditions over the Atlantic began to worsen, and Corrigan reasonably decided that it was better to postpone his flight across the ocean. It is one thing to play with American bureaucrats and quite another to joke around with the harsh weather over the North Atlantic, which doesn't have a sense of humor. As Corrigan later noted in his autobiography, the only bright moment in his chain of failures was his old Curtiss Robin. Friends called his plane an old crate since the plane's door was held tight with a piece of wire, but Douglas loved his plane. He later recalled, "I had always considered my plane as a little ray of sunshine," and that was the name he put on the colony. Corrigan flew back to California, but a federal inspector was already waiting for him at the San Diego airfield. Immediately after landing, Corrigan's plane was locked in the hangar for the next 6 months. So now, after having lost the sunshine, it seemed like Corrigan's dream disappeared into darkness for good. With the ban on flying his plane and the constant refusal from the Federal Bureau of Air Commerce, Douglas felt that there was no end to his bad luck. But despite all these setbacks, Corrigan had no intentions to give up. Douglas took on any job, whether it was an aircraft mechanic or anything else that would allow him to have access to airplanes and flying, thus improving his pilot skills. Based on his recent experience of flying in harsh weather conditions and experience in technical issues, which likely happened over the continent and not somewhere above the Atlantic Ocean, Douglas fixed and slightly upgraded the engine on his Sunshine. This not only increased Corrigan's chances for success, but also allowed him to get a permit for test flights. Corrigan received a permission to make a non-stop flight to New York and then, if he made it, a non-stop flight back to Los Angeles. Without wasting any time, Corrigan headed to New York, where he spent several days. According to the official plan, he was supposed to fly back on July 17th and then, roughly after 27 hours, land in Los Angeles. The only things Corrigan had with him on board were $15, 2 chocolate bars, a box of fig bars, and a quart of water. For the navigation equipment, he had an old compass and a map of the USA. It wasn't much, but quite enough for a cross-country flight. But the thing is, he was not over the continent anymore. All this time, Douglas was flying not to the west, but in the opposite direction, to the east.
But there were a lot of daring young people anxious to open up the airways of the world, and one of them was also closely associated with San Diego. His name was Douglas Corrigan. On the morning of July 17th, 1938, Doug Corrigan was preparing for a flight from New York to Long Beach. His single-engine Curtiss Robin was a used plane, already 9 years old. What nobody knew, except maybe Douglas Corrigan, was that he was headed for a place in history. Instead of landing in Long Beach, 28 hours after takeoff, Corrigan landed in Dublin, Ireland, swearing to everyone who would listen that he had become confused, had simply flown the wrong way. It's 50 years later, but the man and his plane are still running strong. The national hero has come out of relative seclusion to be honored at this weekend's Hawthorne Airfair near Los Angeles.
Here we are, the first time it's been running for almost 50 years, and it's just idling now. We'll get it turning up again a little bit in a minute. I gotta look in here and see if I got oil pressure there.
There's still excitement in his eyes, back at the stick of the plane that carried him into the history books. The Robin has just been reassembled after sitting in Corrigan's Santa Ana garage for nearly 50 years. Volunteers with the Southern California Historical Aviation Foundation did the rebuilding job, but its foundation president, Leo Day, who may have performed a minor miracle. With some help from friends, he's the one who talked a reclusive, cantankerous Corrigan into taking part in this weekend's Hawthorne Air Show. That's when the job of reassembling the old Curtiss Robin began, when airplane builders like Ed Clark had to start figuring out how to get the fragile antique back together again. After some trial and error, they had it up and running.
I tell you, most all the people were helping on it were all airplane people, and we were very careful because the fabric is very, very bad on it. If you push with your finger, you can go through it. Of course, Douglas Corrigan, he thinks he wants to fly this thing, but it's just a little bit too bad to fly.
Even though the Robin may not fly this weekend, old Wrong Way Corrigan will likely taxi it around the Hawthorne Airfield for spectators, and then, of course, share the story of how he allegedly made his famous mistake. You've got to remember that for years, Douglas Corrigan had been asking for government permission to make a transatlantic flight, and that he had been told repeatedly that he and his clunker of an airplane would never be allowed. The federal official in charge finally told Corrigan to just stop asking.
He wasn't mad, he was pleasant about it, but the last thing he said was, "Get lost." Well, 2 years later I got lost. So I did just what the government told me to do. It's not my fault.
So the mystery remains. Did he do it by accident, or did he go the wrong way on purpose? One man waited 10 years to ask for a second time for the true story of Douglas Wrong Way Corrigan.
So I told him the story, and when I got through, he says, "That's the same story you told me 10 years ago." And I said, "Yeah, that's the only story I know." And he said, "And you've told it so many times, you probably believe it yourself by now." And I do.
Well, maybe he does, and maybe he doesn't. But you can bet at this weekend's Hawthorne Airfair, officials will be keeping a close eye on Wrong Way Corrigan.
Here's the International Space Station. Yeah, look at that nice big portion of the surface in view. Unfortunately, this isn't to scale. If the Earth were the size of an apple, how far away would the International Space Station orbit? Like this far away? Maybe this far away. Or maybe this far away. Actually, it orbits here, 2.7 millimeters above the surface. That's how far the stem of this apple sticks up. That's not very far. Oh, here's another fun little to-scale fact. If the Earth were the size of an apple, your eyeball would be about the size of the moon. We often imagine that from the International Space Station, astronauts see the Earth like this, but they're just not that far away. From where they actually orbit, International Space Station residents only see about 3% of Earth's surface at any one time.
Ike is one of the biggest liars, disinformation, bullshit artists that ever lived. Stay away from that guy. Stay away from his books. Stay away from his lectures. Stay away from him, period.
Is he the guy that's from England? He was a sports broadcaster or something?
I don't know what he was. He's a liar. That's what he is. And I'm saying it on the air, and I'm saying it to his face, and if he don't like it, he can sue me. Lying scum.
Okay. I've heard of him, but I've not really heard much of what he has to say, but...
Oh, according to him, Queen Elizabeth goes down in the dungeon in Windsor Castle and changes into a giant lizard.
That does sound pretty far out.
And it's the lizard people who disguise themselves as humans who are really running the world. And I can't believe it. I mean, millions of people are falling for this bullshit. And believe it.
Jeez.
I mean, it's disgusting. Makes me just want to go out and strangle somebody.
Well, what did P.T. Barnum say, you know?
Oh, God. Yeah, but I always thought he was talking about entertainment. I didn't know that this was going on in the real world.
I don't think a lot of people know the difference, Bill, between entertainment and the real world.
I have to discover that was the greatest letdown that I've ever had in my life, was to discover that the American people are exactly what the Illuminati think they are.
Exactly right.
Stupid animals.
I think you're right.
Sheep.
Thanks, Bill. Good night.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling. And if that hurts your feelings, then that means you know that I'm talking to you. If it doesn't hurt your feelings, then it certainly doesn't apply to you. See, if what I say on this broadcast makes you mad, it's because I've hit you right in the solar plexus and you know it's true. Otherwise, you wouldn't get mad about it.
And if you don't understand the nature of your enemy and the weapons they use, you cannot fight that enemy. You can't fight the battle. You shouldn't even be on the battlefield. That's why you're losing the war. And don't tell me you're not, because I'm in a place of great knowledge about who's winning and who's losing this war. And I can assure you, you're losing the war. Doesn't mean it can't be turned around. But it'll never be turned around until you learn what you need to know. Don't spread a rumor. Spread the truth. Document it. Prove it. Make it irrefutable, and you too will become dangerous to those who admire us in lies and enslave us. You don't really understand sometimes what a terrible burden it is to know some of the things that I know, and try to wake people up and impart this knowledge to them, and find out that they just have walls built in front of them. They want to be slaves, but we're making some chinks in those walls.
Morning, America. We're almost finished with bombing and starving the innocent.
I doubt it. Not until all the innocent sand people are gone. Let's see how Americans are preparing for the war.
They're going to do so well in Iran.
Mom, I started an OnlyFreaks after my abortion, and my pronouns are they. Thumb. Leave me alone.
I want to die for Israel after supporting the chosen people.
Kids say the silliest things, don't they?
They really do. Good thing our government cracked down on the rampant anti-Semitism. My kid got suspended last week.
What did he do?
He just brought his calculator to history class. Can you tell us what happened in there?
I said there was only enough red sauce to make 271,000 pizzas at best, and then he sent me to detention.
That's based.
John, that kid is an extremist Hamas terrorist.
Yeah.
Huh?
Jackie, the so-called Semites worship Satan.
John's right. These kids just found out the painter from Austria wasn't burning educational books, but the Jewish corn stash. Live at State University. Jake, GTV News. I'm going to need you to shut it down, sweetie. The Talmud has 8 genders, so leave us alone.
Exactly. And Israel is our greatest ally.
That's the gayest thing I've ever heard.
So gay. Breaking news. My producers informed us we got the terrorists.
Uh-oh.
Tom reports live from the genocide.
That's right, Jenny. The IDF report innocent sand people hiding in hospitals and schools. Again. We got them.
These people unfortunately survived.
Please, can you spare a bag of flour? We're starving.
Ew, no.
This is actually what they deserve. I mean, you can't just be this sandy and get away with it. Must suck not being chosen. Ugh, gross. Back to you, John.
So yeah, it's a genocide, and our government has decided to finish the job. We go live to Tim to see where our taxpayer dollars go first.
We're here outside the Foreskins restaurant. Rabbi Foreskin serves his famous foreskin salad directly from the source of tragedy. They ordered their foreskins from a young boy, not an old man. You idiot. Cook it again. How are the foreskins today?
They're delightful. I've tried the Chinese version, but the Palestinian one is exquisite.
That Talmud really allows them to do some interesting things.
I'd personally never try foreskin salad, but then again, I don't worship Satan.
They give herpes to babies. And I see you still haven't followed Jake GTV yet. It's okay. You must like being retarded.
Good morning. The air is filled with chemtrails, your phone is listening, and your tax dollars just bought bombs for a country you don't live in.
Right. Shapiro-Stein, take it away.
Thanks, John. Just because the founders of Facebook, Google, Dell, Oracle, and Salesforce all belong to the same group, Jews, doesn't mean there's an agenda.